I hope you guys enjoyed, watching those OK Go videos instead of just staring at this for like 10 minutes. I thought that was a little bit more pleasant. But anyway, so this is HTML5 at YouTube. Stories from the mobile front. We sort of changed the title a little bit, but it's still a lot of the same sort of thing. So a little bit about just who we are. We sort of look a little bit like that. That's me there, and I always wear the same sort of hat, and I got my player T-shirt on under here as well. But anyway, so I'm Greg Schechter. I'm the web warrior at YouTube. And I sort of deal with all the sort of HTML5 features at YouTube, and I focus on the HTML5 video player. And this is Zoltan. I'll let him talk about himself.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Zoltan. I work on the YouTube mobile website at m.youtube.com. You guys are probably more familiar with the app. The website gets a little less traffic, but on the flip side, it has to work on pretty much every device. If it has a browser and can play video, we would like YouTube to work on it. So our team deals with a lot of different devices every day, feature phones, smartphones, and tablets.
Cool. Thanks, Zoltan. Sort of when I was thinking about this talk, I sort of thought about, like, what is Google I/O about? And here's a picture of me from a couple years ago when I came to my first I/O. And it was really, for us, like, I was an intern at the time, and it was about seeing, like, cool stuff. We were super excited to see the newest and the coolest things that were happening. And, and I definitely think that we did a pretty good job this morning, and people were cheering. Like, it's a pretty, cool conference. Last year, we showed off this thing called the Rome project. And if you guys don't remember, I'll just play, like, this little sample video. It was basically just this interactive music video. And so it used a lot of cool technologies and WebGL, and this is all, it's all interactive in the browser and just sort of showed the power of what you could do. And this is really cool, and everybody thought it was really neat. And then I tried to look at it on my phone. And, so I took this year's awesome hardware. This isn't a picture of the Nexus 7, but, whatever. And this is what happens. I get this little error screen, and that was kind of really disappointing. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, Chrome doesn't have WebGL support on mobile devices. So, okay, there are other browsers that I have on my phone. Like, let me see what happens there. And, well, it didn't give me the error screen, but it certainly didn't work either. So this was kind of a disappointment. And then I was sort of wondering, okay, is all this coolness, is it ready to use? As developers, can we use it at YouTube? Can you guys use it when you're building your sites? Because that's sort of what we hope for when we talk about all these neat things. So it kind of, this story that we're going to be talking about is kind of a battle on the different features and stuff. And we should have plenty of cat references throughout because it is, YouTube talk. So let's talk about HTML5. What does HTML5 bring to the table? What are the cool technologies that we're going to talk about here, and what other people have talking about at the other talks throughout the day and throughout the conference? Well, so this is just a quick sort of list of the different things that they sort of have. And at YouTube, well, obviously we're a video website, so the one that we care about the most is the multimedia one. And but oddly enough, we actually use quite a few of these on the website. And so we'll go and look into all these things separately and about the different things that they provide and what we use and how they make YouTube kind of awesome. But like I said, so why do, who can use this stuff? Because clearly the WebGL stuff, wasn't going to work on my phone today. So, and it's sort of for you guys as developers, well, it's going to depend on your users, who your audience is, who you're trying to target. And, just sort of an idea, like when I was in school, my sort of audience looked like this. I didn't care about IE as much. Not to say that they don't have wonderful browsers today, but at the time, like the people that I wasn't using IE, and I wasn't going to focus on it for my development. But the last company that I worked for, we actually cared about IE a lot, and we cared about if a user had JavaScript, if they didn't have JavaScript, and at YouTube, it's sort of it's kind of like this. We support as many browsers as we can, but sort of early browsers of IE, we don't give them full support. So when you think about the stuff that we talk about, remember who your users are, who you want to support, and who your target's going to be. So then, why are we going to use this HTML5 stuff? things been working fine for a while? So, well, let's start to sort of answer that question. So the first thing we're going to look at is just CSS3 styling. And this one I don't actually think is as exciting as some of the other topics. One of the first things that people talk about is rounded corners. In the early days, it used to require us to use a lot of images to get sort of this nice sort of prettiness. But today, we can just drop in a little snippet of code, and we get this roundedness on our divs and things like that. And the nice thing about a feature like this is if the browser is supported, it's just square corners. It still works. It still looks fine for the most part. Transitions are a little bit more interesting, a little bit more newer. They don't have as much support, and so we have to make sure that everything's browser prefix, with our vendor prefixes here. But same thing, just like one sort of line of code, and we can get a nice sort of smooth transition to just sort of make things look a little prettier. So what advantages do we get from this? Well, it's going to enhance our user experience. Certainly the transitions will make things smoother, make it more interesting to look at, make it more pretty. And it's a lot less code than like having to worry about all these different situations where you're bringing in images and doing these hacks. And because of that, you're going to get faster performance. You're not going to load images anymore. The browser's going to take care of it for you. And so we're not going to waste all this extra development time trying to worry about it. So that's cool. That's awesome. And this experience is still great without it. So instead of thinking about why HTML5 for us, it's really more of a question about when HTML5. We know that it's going to bring us a better experience and be faster and more performant and all these great things. So we don't need to think about why anymore. It's really about when. When do we bring it in? So just a little idea, how many of our users get some of the CSS3 coolness? Well, with rounded quarters, it's about 85%. The newer versions of IE do have rounded quarter support, IE9 and forward, but the older ones don't. And so at YouTube, that's about 85% of our users. Transitions is a little bit less. About 70% of the users today will get the cool transitions. So now let's talk about performance and integration. And this is a little bit more interesting because I get to talk about uploads. I think uploads is pretty neat. So this is a picture of our uploads page. And the part that I want to point out is up here, that little sort of progress bar. Now, we do this in HTML5. We use XHR to do this. And it's very simple. We can have a little snippet of code like this where we can create a request and send our blob or our file over, and we can listen to like the progress updates and be able to have this responsive user interface where the user knows what's going on. And so, it's just very simple. We get that sort of experience instead of just having the user have to sit there and wait until it's done. And so this is great, and why? Because there's a little bit more than just like that little sort of prettiness. But it gives us, like I said, a richer user experience with those progress updates. We can also do multiple file uploads. Just the browser allows us to do this really easily. And we can do resumable uploads. This API sort of has this ability to, if upload stops, we can start off where it left off and keep going. Whereas before, we would have to rely on plugins to have these advanced features. Silverlight has these features to it. And certainly with Post, we didn't get all this great functionality. So this is great. We can use XHR, and we do on our site to enhance our user experience. So what percentage of our users get this new awesomeness? It's about 75%. IE is trailing. They have XHR support in the newer versions, and they have core support, which we also use for our uploads, but it's not quite there yet. So let's sort of up the coolness now and talk about my favorite portion, which is multimedia. Obviously it's going to be great because this is the part that I work on the most, and it's all cat videos and stuff. So like I said, it's all about video, and traditionally we talk about things on the desktop. Desktop's pretty cool, and like I said, we do cat videos, but maybe you guys are going to produce a video website that focuses on something else. And Flash has worked great for us in the past. And now we have this new HTML5 technology. So what did we expect to get when we switched to HTML5? Well, because it's open source, that's pretty cool, and we can have open source browsers, players, and codecs help move this technology faster in a more interesting way. Without the need for Flash, this extra plugin, this extra integration in the system, we expect that it's going to be faster. You don't have to instantiate this plugin, and it's going to be more tightly bundled with the browser, so it should perform better. And it's, of course, accessibility is a big thing. For example, just being able to tab around and interact with the video player with just the HTML elements that the browser is sort of used to interacting with is done for you, whereas like with Flash, you have to make hacks if you want to be able to tab into the Flash player and to interact with it if you're using a screen reader or something. And power consumption is a big one, and we'll sort of dive deeper into that when we talk sort of more about mobile stuff. So who can use HTML5 today? It's about 80% of our users, which is pretty cool. We don't serve it to 80% of our users yet, but we do. This number is great because a year and a half ago, this was only about 35%. And the world kind of looked a little bit like this a year and a half ago. We had, and this was a bit of an exaggeration, but we had all these places where we could use Flash, a good chunk where we could use HTML5, and a tiny sliver where it was HTML5 only, and that was, iPhone and iPod. Now, clearly, today's world is a little bit different. The numbers that we showed off in the morning show that mobile growth is huge, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But this is sort of where we started when we were thinking, like, why are we going to build this HTML5 video player? Because most of our users can have Flash. It's been working well for us. But the interesting thing is when we looked at our API, who was using our API, what kind of interesting applications they were building, and where they were trying to build it, it sort of shifted. And we saw that in most places, where people were building interesting apps, it was places that needed an HTML5 player because Flash wasn't supported. And so this was really exciting. This was, this made it obvious for us that we needed to have an HTML5 player. But now let's talk mobile, because I think that's more interesting. It's more new. That was sort of the past. We made those decisions to go in that direction. So where are we, what do we have to worry about now? So the first thing is thinking about just why. Why is mobile important? Well, so this is sort of the playback stats that we had from 2010 going into 2011. And we can see that it's unfortunately like, desktop is so huge at YouTube that mobile is still kind of a small percent. But the difference is desktop increased by about 30% between these years, and mobile tripled. And I really wish that we had numbers for today, but we haven't quite compiled all those official numbers yet. But this will be a lot more. It's like about 10% of our total playbacks now. And if we showed you what we had for this year, when we have all that data, I'm sure that it'll be a lot larger. So this is exciting. This is a growing market and a place that we need to, provide a good video experience. So how do we do that? Well, so there are a couple technologies we can use on mobile. Well, there's Flash. We can do native stuff, and we can use HTML5 video. Now, Flash on the desktop sort of equals Flash on the phone. Like, you don't have to make too many changes. It's going to work. But the problem is you don't get Flash everywhere. Some devices don't support it. Certainly, iOS is a good example of that, and Android. Newer versions of Android don't have Flash. So that, we kind of threw that out. So then we have native, and native is good. What we can do here is we can have a simple RTSP protocol. Just have that URL up there that'll point to a video stream, and then we can serve the video, and the phone will kind of do the work for us. And this is great if we don't have HTML5 playback, HTML5 video, because otherwise we'd be able to build a richer experience. We also have the ability to open up an app. If we have an app on the phone, we can use a native app protocol to open that up. And iOS does sort of special case a lot of the YouTube stuff, which is nice for us, but if you're building your own things, obviously you don't have that kind of pull. So don't worry about that one as much. But let's talk about HTML5 video. So most of the time people think of it sort of like this. They think of like there's Safari in some places and they have Android in other places. And that's sort of a misconception because really the world looks like that. We have a lot of different browsers. We have I have all of these installed on my phone that I have, and so these are full-featured browsers. Opera Mini is a proxy browser. Silk sort of does things in a different way. And really, this is still just a sample. There's a lot of different browsers that we have to worry about when we're building video applications. So don't think that it's just like Safari and Android. But now let's sort of get serious and talk about best practices and how we can build those applications. And so I'm going to hand it over to Zoltan for this.
Thanks, Greg. So yeah, it's serious business. So let's see how this looks in code. So you have a video tag, and that's great. And let's stick a source file in there. It's our funny cat video. And in theory, yeah, that's all there is to it. It's a video with a file. But so here's where it gets serious. So let's think about what format the video is in, like what devices can play it back. So there's a whole bunch of different codecs that you have to consider. Various devices support various formats. Let's see the breakdown. So H.264 is pretty much supported everywhere across the board. It's a great bet. All of the mainstream browsers support it. WebM is kind of runner-up. We also include HLS on this chart. It's not really a codec. It's more of a way to slice up your videos and stream them. That's a way to go for live streaming or adaptive streaming. It's supported in iOS and newer versions of Android. So H.264 is a really safe bet if you want to go with that. It's a good idea to keep in mind the various devices and their OS distribution, the breakdown. iOS, pretty much every device made in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years supports HTML5 video. Apple is pretty good with getting users to upgrade to the latest version, so no worries there. On Android, HTML5 video works on 2.2 and up, so there's a tiny minority who still can't use it, but otherwise it's good to go. And the newer versions like 4.0 up have like more advanced support. So if you want to use like multiple types of formats, there's the way to do it. You can take a video tag and have multiple source tags inside it, and the phone's going to go through it and like pick one that it knows it can play and go with that.
So, so one of the cool things I think about mobile is looking at power. And so this, what I have here, I just have a screenshot, a little video capture from one of our data centers. It's cat powered, which I think is very important. I tried taking one of these systems and putting it and having one of my servers that's at my desk run, but somebody had a cat allergy, so I just had to, kind of plug it into the wall. I wanted it to be more of a green space, but it wasn't working. Anyway, enough of those cats. They're kind of noisy sometimes. But anyway, so this. That's no good. So this is sort of a look at some work that this guy Yossi Oren did, and he does research in power consumption out in Tel Aviv. Great guy. And so what he did is he took a tablet that's available in China today that has a WebM chip, because most phones don't, most tablets don't today. And he did some power consumption measurements for us. And so you can see here that like when the phone is idle, it doesn't use up that much power. That's what you would expect, what you would hope. And you can see that Flash eats up a lot of power, and but like when you're using hardware acceleration with WebM and H.264, it's really, really small. And so this is great. And the H.264 one is smaller than WebM. And so we really encourage you with, when you're deciding what formats to encode things, and think about power consumption for your users. So when WebM is available on phones, you're going to get a good experience. And this is first generation stuff. And so this is only going to improve. But today, it's not as many places. You might want to choose H.264 for power and other reasons. Although one of the cool things that happened is Yossi just gave us some new numbers for looking at a Chromebook. And I did see that the WebM numbers were better than H.264, which is pretty exciting, because WebM is a great technology that we use at the Tube. So this is pretty neat. Now, let's actually talk about sticking a video tag on the page. So you got your formats, you picked it, what does it look like? And here I just have a really simple page. It's just going to have a video tag, and there's a H.264 and WebM, and sort of both tags in there. And I have some screenshots down here of what the different browsers look like on a mobile device. And the thing, it's not really important to look at all the differences too much, but what I want you guys to notice is they don't look like a video tag, except for this one. This is the only one that I feel like I can interact with, that I can actually start playing a video with. Okay, well, that's fine, that's kind of cool. Now maybe there's something that we can use to sort of improve that. Well, there's the poster attribute, and so we can have our custom poster here, and so here's an example. But if we look, when we actually stick this in the page, well, sure, some of them, this one's kind of buggy, that's fine. But it still doesn't look like a video that we can interact with, that we can really build, this is not a good user experience, because I don't know I can play these videos yet. And so I'm going to have Zoltan talk about what we can do, what we suggest to improve that experience.
Thanks, Greg. So as you've seen, the poster attribute, you can specify a little picture for the thumbnail, and it looks pretty much different on each device. Each browser and OS, they might stretch the image to the dimensions of the video tag, or they might scale it proportionally to the original image size, may or may not put a play icon on it. So it's very inconsistent. So what can we do to improve the looks? Well, one thing is that you can do is just not use the poster at all. And we do that at YouTube at the mobile website. Just render your own thumbnail with an image. You can use your own play button, put it there. It looks great. It looks consistent on each platform. And when the user clicks on it, you can go play the video. That's pretty much a good solution. Can't do anything about it. The platforms are too different, so we can do it this way. So one interesting thing to look at is how do the videos actually play back? What happens when you click on a video and start playing it? And there's two big classes of devices out there. Those that support playback inline in the page. This is what you're most familiar with from desktop browsers. The video is right there inside your website. The iPad does this. Newer Androids can handle this. And there's another big class, and it's very interesting to talk about because there's a lot of phones, mostly iPhone, iOS, which doesn't do that. It goes full screen all the time, no matter what. It doesn't support inline playback, unless you're in a web view and an app. But so in Safari in general, that's not the case, so we have to deal with it. So let's see what we can do about that. Let's see the good parts first. So video playback does work. The video goes full screen, which is great. We don't have to worry about the UI. In fact, we don't have to worry about the video element at all. It can be anywhere on the page. It can be anywhere in the DOM. It can be super tiny, 1 by 1 pixel off screen. It doesn't matter as long as it's not display none. If it's visible, the phone will play it, no problem. There's also a very cool zoom-in animation that the iPhone does. From the position of the video tag, it goes full screen. So if you put it kind of in the middle, that looks pretty cool when you go and hit play. Also on WebKit, browsers in general, it has really good interaction with the rest of your website, just like you would expect on a normal desktop browser. All the events happen as you would expect, time updates, playing, pause, full screen, exit full screen. You can change the website in the background while your video is actually full screen. So that's pretty good. You can keep track of what's happening during playback and get a really good interactive experience. Yeah, but there are some caveats that you have to think about. One thing is that it is native controls only, and the OS or the browser provides the controls. No way to change that. You cannot do overlays on the video, so if you'd like to do captions or something else, unfortunately that doesn't work. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so about controls, Greg has a lot more interesting stuff.
So right, so once you've gotten your video playing, the next obvious thing is to add some controls to it. So the browser gives us native controls with a simple attribute like that. And so we can see, here's the Chrome ones, and if we scroll down again, I've got screenshots of all of them, and each of them are sort of a little different. And that's really all you need to take from that. So what I want to do here is just sort of call out, this is just a sort of a table of the different support we have. And the top row here is all green. That's for the play and pause button. And the seek bar. All these controls have these two features. So this is something to keep in mind. The other ones, some people feel it's important, some browsers feel it's not. Well, now let's think about sort of building custom controls. Now, why might you want to build your own custom controls? Well, you kind of want to preserve your brand. It's very important at YouTube that everybody, when you're watching a YouTube video, you know it's a YouTube video. We have a certain look and feel. We have that nice red play button that people recognize, and it helps preserve our brand across the site. So that's one sort of reason. And now, granted, you could do that with just the Q state as well, as we talked about earlier when you're in the view with that thumbnail ahead of time. But also, you can unify your experience across all these platforms. They all interact a little bit differently. They look a little bit different. You can make sure that when somebody comes and they're watching a video of yours, they know how to interact with it. They know what to expect. So I built a little, sort of demonstration here. Now these buttons are kind of small. We'll, let's imagine we might be using our fingers, so be sure, to make them a little bigger. And I got a nice play button here. This video will play, how lovely. And I can seek around in the video just fine. Now, imagine, now one thing I want to show you is it's a new feature that we're going to be experimenting with on YouTube. So this is sort of like the debut of it. It's this button here. Let's say you're watching and you're like, I need more cats. So this is the kitty time button right here, and it'll give you a cat to sort of complement your viewing experience. And if I hit play, you can still hear the sound behind it. So it's not, it's sort of an immersive cat experience. Now you might laugh at that, why I'm going to be using cats, but I'm sort of doing it to demonstrate a point. It allows you, with custom controls, that you can expand that set. You can expand your feature set by doing these things. And so at YouTube, we have annotations and playlists and captions and more features that we can add by having these custom controls. So it's something that you might want to think about when building a video application. So all right, so now what are the pro tips? Building your own controls. First thing, users are going to be able to expect to drag that progress bar. This doesn't happen with all the native control, with all the interactions for the native control. So remember that you have to prevent the scroll, which is the native, the default browser behavior with touch start. Volume can actually get set on all the phones. Not all the browsers allow you to do it. And people are used to using the hardware buttons to control the volume. So don't waste your time on that. You don't need to build a UI to do volume. Maybe mute. Mute is, we're not quite sure. You do have the ability to do that, but certainly not a whole volume slider. And remember, people's fingers are fat. So we recommend that you make sure that your buttons are big enough and spaced out enough so that people can click on them and interact with them. And also, because you're probably going to be sharing these things with your desktop applications and your mobile applications, you can use SVGs. And this way your icons can scale, so you don't have to be making new images for both your mobile version and your desktop version. And certainly I can hover my finger on top of my phone, but the browser's not going to know that. So don't trigger content with hover. And the last kind of thing is full screen. The browsing context is sort of always in full screen, so you can kind of fake it a little bit. But I'll let Zoltan sort of dive a little bit deeper and talk about what that means and what our options are today.
Sure. So if you have a video, it's a great thing to look at on full screen on the phone. It's really more immersive. So what can we do about that? Well, there's this HTML5 full screen API that's kind of getting standardized or in the process. Unfortunately, it's not really available on any of the mainstream mobile browsers. I think Firefox was the first to get support.
Right, so Firefox added support on their stable branch, I believe, yesterday.
Yeah, so it's just starting to get ripe, and all the devices out there right now can't use this. Unfortunately, it would be really nice to have it, because then you could take the div containing your whole player, like the little demo that Greg had earlier with the cat button. You could take all of that full screen with all the controls and overlays and everything. And unfortunately, we can't do that at the moment. So what can we do? Well, we can fake it.
Now we're going?
Yes. So isn't mobile already full screen? Well, the browser is. So what we can do about it is take the video as full screen as it will go, which is the extent of the browser minus the browser Chrome. So one thing you can do if, for example, we do this in YouTube embeds, is just open a new tab with just the embedded video running full screen. In that case, since the dimensions of the screen change, it's a good idea to rely on the device width if you're sizing your controls in pixels to make sure that things still look proportional and big enough to click on. Another thing you can do is there's this API separate from the HTML5 full screen API called WebKit request full screen. It's a method on the video tag. WebKit under full screen. It's only available on WebKit. And what it does is it takes the video full screen just like it would have gone if the user clicked on the native full screen button. It goes full screen with native controls only, with all the usual caveats that applied to it in the previous part. So this works great on an iPad, for example. There's a couple of restrictions on when this API can be called. The video has to be kind of loaded already, and it needs a click event to function for various security reasons. And so speaking of click events, Autoplay is another fun thing to talk about. So yeah, we have videos, and we would definitely like to play them as soon as the user gets to their website. But so unfortunately, it doesn't work. What you get is a video with a play button, and it's not auto-playing. So why? What's happening here? Well, the thing is, since mobile users are usually on 3G connection or any kind of mobile connection, it might not be unlimited. It might be metered. They have a quota, or they're paying for it. So in the decision, that's like there are pro and contra arguments both sides. But Apple is the first to decide that they're not going to allow autoplaying on videos in general. Which devices have this restriction is Safari on iOS. And actually, the other mainstream browsers are following suit. So Android browser is introducing this in, I don't know, 4 point something onwards, as is Chrome on Android. So it's another thing that we have to deal with in mobile development. So what can we do about this? Well, first, let's check all the other browsers. Firefox and Opera do support it. None of the mainstream browsers do. And the ones that do, it's going away. So it's best not to count on being able to autoplay a video. So the next best thing we can do is actually have the user signal their intent to play by clicking on the video, and we can start playing there. And the way it works is, in its simplest form, just hook it right up in the event handler on a click event, play the video. So in our case, the logic is a little more complex than it might be for your website. So for YouTube, for example, in embeds, it loads the embed first, but it doesn't have the video URL, and it has to go and fetch all that data, get a bunch of metadata, make some decisions, and see if it's OK. So when we get the video URL, it's an AJAX response, which is not a click handler. So we can't play the video, and that's too bad. There is a trick to get this to work. We have a bit of code. The function on top, it runs when the user clicks, and the one on bottom runs when the AJAX request returns. And so on top, I'd like you to look at this line that says video tag.load. What this does, it calls load on an empty uninitialized video tag, which does absolutely nothing visible. What it does do is mark the video tag as user interacted. So if you keep that object around or that tag around in the DOM, that guy is good to go. It can play videos later on. And so when you have the AJAX response, just set the source and hit play, rather call play, and it is going to work. And this is actually, it works in iOS, and also the newer Android browsers, which introduce the restriction, also work like this, as does Chrome on Android. So it's not part of the standard, but it's a hack that you can use. Another thing here is calling play in Android and the AJAX response handler doesn't work. So what can we do about that? Apparently, it's some kind of issue with the browser. What you can do is take the play command out of the current thread of execution with a 0-second timeout. And this is a good tip in general. If something multimedia related is kind of wonky in the browser, it doesn't work. This is a good thing to try. Try to do it in a timeout. Often, it actually helps and things start working again. These are the types of browser quirks that we have to deal with day to day.
So now let's talk about embeds. Now this stuff is not specific to mobile, although it does work there too. So one of the things, after you've built a video application, you've built the really thing, sometimes it's important for you to make sure that your content can be on other people's websites. And so at YouTube, this is very important for us. A lot of people depend on YouTube embeds, and it really enhances their experience. And so this is great. So embeds are important to us. So what can you do? The first thing when people think about embedding content is they think of a script tag. And this, in most cases, is usually fine. But at YouTube, we're more than just a video tag. We're a whole video player, and we can't have the user's CSS and JavaScript sort of interacting with our player, possibly changing the styling of things. So we need our content to be sandboxed. So script tag doesn't really work well for us. Now we did have, we could use an object tag, and for our Flash player, that worked great for many years. We're able to load in a full, a full HTML page in it, and the user can interact with it. But the problem is you can't interact with it through JavaScript. And we have an API that a lot of people depend on, a lot of developers depend on. So we couldn't, that wasn't really an option for us either. So last, we have an iframe. The iframe is a great solution because our content is sandboxed. And we can have JavaScript API communication through something called post message. And so this was great. We're able to build that. And so it looks something like that. It's pretty simple. You just have the video ID there for your embed. And one thing I want to call out here is that line right there. Now, we talked about full screen a little bit earlier and how there's request full screen API. Now, today, this does absolutely nothing. But the hope is once those standards are finalized, that this will allow us to get full screen access. So why do we have it here now? Why is that there if it does nothing? And it's because our embeds, when they go out into the wild, they're going to stay there for a long time. We've had our iframe embed as our default embedding experience for almost 2 years now, and it still has less playbacks and impressions than our old Flash embeds do. Most people still use that on the web. So when you think about these things, it's very important that you plan for the future if you can. Realize where things are going to go. When you send something out to the web, it's going to stay there for a long time. So plan for it. So pro tips, if you're going to do an iframe for embedding, very simple CSS trick right here. Make sure that you put overflow hidden on your HTML. iOS has some issues with resizing and stuff, so this will save you a lot of hassle, a lot of trouble. The next thing that we recommend you do is on your body tag, make sure you stretch it out the whole 100% width and height, and you change the background color. For us, it's appropriate. We want a black background color. For your application, it might make more sense for it to be a different color. And this way, if somebody starts resizing that iframe, then you make sure that your background sort of stays the same and you're not having redraw issues where they can see through the white on the back. So this is just something useful that we have. And the last thing here is we recommend that you get rid of the tap highlight color. Now for some use cases this is great, but at YouTube with our play button, when you click on it, there is a visual feedback that you get. I can see that the loading icon started spinning. I know that I clicked on that video player. I don't need the whole thing to be highlighted as well, which is kind of weird and looks kind of sloppy. So if you have a visual feedback when they click on it, you don't need that highlight there. And with that, I'll hand it back to Zoltan.
Thanks. So the last part of the HTML5 features that we had is offline and storage, and this is most applicable to mobile. The two big ones that we use at YouTube are our local storage and app cache. Local storage is great. You can use it to store one-off small bits of data, cache some small things. We do use that a lot. But what I want to talk about this time around is app cache. So it's very interesting. So app cache is this way to cache the entire website for offline access. So YouTube is a website that plays videos from the cloud. So isn't it kind of worthless to cache something offline? Well, yes and no. So what app cache does do is save us the download time for the actual code for the website. On mobile, you pay for code size twice generally, once for the download and once for parsing and evaluating the script. On newer devices, it's not really that big of an issue, but on older iPhones, it took seriously measurable time to actually parse the script. So large bits of code were pretty bad. So at least with app cache, you can save the download part, and that's just great for latency and for the users in general. So let's see how this works. So here's a very simple example HTML file. What I want to call out is the manifest up top. The manifest is basically a text file that lists all the resources on the website. So for example, here we have a script file and a style sheet. And so our manifest file would look something like this. It says cache the script and the style sheet. And you can also specify some files that you always want to load off of the network and never cache. In this case, this image is always going to come from the network. And so that's great. You have an app cache and your users are happily browsing with their own copy of the website. But then next week you push the latest and greatest new version. So how can you get the users to get the new version downloaded? So in app cache, the state of the website is tied to the manifest. So if the manifest changes, the website is considered changed. So one thing you can do is just stick a comment right there at the bottom with some kind of build ID or timestamp. I use the date as the example here. And when you push a new version, you can update that, and the phones might check later on and download the new code. But how can we make them do it sooner? Let's assume that your website is communicating with some server over AJAX. What you can do is just stick the latest timestamp in your AJAX response, and then in your code, which knows about its previous build ID or timestamp, it can check if it's newer and just go ahead and initiate the update process. There's this update API here. It's a little more involved, actually. There's a couple of function calls, like swap out the old version and new version. But this is the gist of it. That said, AppCache has a lot of gotchas. One thing is that the files that you specify to be cached cannot have any get parameters. They are considered different files if they do have get parameters. Also, some implementations like iOS 5 and onwards, they treat the manifest file as like very strict list of files and refuse to load anything else unless it's listed in the network. Since YouTube streams videos from many different servers, we actually had to put a little wildcard there to make like all the videos come from the network no matter what. Otherwise, the phone just refuses to download them. Also, the thing with AppCache is it's easy to get it wrong in a scary way. Like, you don't want to have your users stuck on an old buggy version of the code. Like if your website crashes and there's no way to update it, that's very scary. AppCache has like these copies of the website, and each manifest file is tied to a copy, so you can end up with multiple copies. Redirects close to loading your website the first time, like 303s or history API replace state that change the URL, can fool the phone into thinking, or the browser rather, into thinking that it's opened a different website. So it might end up having the wrong URL cached. So just a couple of things to keep an eye on. Some implementations are buggy. So it's best to like develop carefully while testing, look at your logs, see what files are actually getting downloaded. Don't assume that it just works. Just something to keep in mind and make sure that your website isn't broken for your users.
So we asked the question earlier, is the coolness ready? And I really think that that it is. It is ready for you to use, and you do need to, and you have to start using it to compete with these emerging mobile markets. And you know, mobile's today, but you know, there might be other things tomorrow. So I want to show you one video, you know, just to think about what we're thinking about at YouTube, what's coming next, and so you should sort of think about this as well. I need this video here.
Best video experience on the internet. But that is all about the change. Our latest innovation gives you a way to literally hold.
All right, there we go.
Since our founding in 2005, we at YouTube have continually strived to bring you the best possible video experience on the internet. But that is all about to change. Our latest innovation gives you a way to literally hold YouTube in your hand. Introducing the YouTube Collection on DVD. It's the complete YouTube experience, completely offline. Enjoying YouTube videos has never been easier. With the YouTube Collection, DVDs have been conveniently organized into a system of nested modules. Simply navigate through the modules until you find the DVD of your choice. Each DVD menu is populated with video thumbnails. Just like on YouTube.com, you can select your playback resolution. And yes, full screen mode is available if desired. The YouTube Collection doesn't require the internet, but you don't lose interactivity. Just fill out the comment form and place it in one of the self-addressed stamped envelopes. Don't forget to throw in a green thumbs up or a red thumbs down. Your feedback will be sent directly to the creator of that particular video, so you can maintain the dialogue that you're used to. The YouTube Collection isn't just a sampling of YouTube, it's all of YouTube. Every YouTube video uploaded ever. As soon as you sign up, we'll dispatch a fleet of 175 YouTube trucks to your home. Your nested video modules will arrive securely shrink-wrapped on pre-categorized pallets. If you live on a steep grade or in an area with low overpasses, your DVDs will be delivered by pack mule. Since approximately an hour of video is uploaded to YouTube every second, you'll receive a new truckload every week. And if you sign up now, we'll give the entire DVD library to a friend or relative of your choice, totally free. Visit youtube.com/the YouTube Collection. Order now and select from a number of free add-ons, including trending videos on Laserdisc, royalty-free soundtracks on vinyl, or weatherproof exterior DVD shelving for when your collection gets too large for the inside of your home. Order the YouTube Collection on DVD. Simple, economical, convenient. A whole new way to enjoy the videos you love.
I figured I'd end with a little bit of a joke, so. But yeah, so thank you guys, and we're happy to take questions. I'm sorry I didn't have any cats in that last video, but we can show some later if you'd like.
Plenty of cats.
Any questions? Yeah.
So I'll just ask it. With iOS devices, will you ever be able to play videos with like an HTML5 player versus just the native player that they play the videos on?
So when you say iOS devices, like there's the 2-bit classes. I don't know if iPhones will ever get inline playback support in the browser.
Yeah, it's hard to talk on Apple's product decisions,
Yeah.
being Google employees. So
Okay. Right.
we just don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Hi, I wanted to hear your thoughts on what obstacles you think are in the way with regards to adaptive streaming on YouTube, and possibly what would it take to kind of use that technology on YouTube across the board.
Sure.
What are those obstacles, do you think?
So adaptive streaming is a pretty cool, neat feature. HLS is a way that we can do that today on the iOS and on newer versions of Android. So we can set that up really easily, and that'll work. So that sort of solves the problem, although of course it doesn't have support everywhere yet. The other thing is there are APIs coming out in Chrome, and they'll be available other places eventually as well, to allow us to actually just toss in bytes into the video tag, and so then we can do the adaptiveness in our code. HLS sort of does it for us, but we'll have that ability to do that in JavaScript if we want to. Is it media source append? Is that what it's called? I think that's what the API is called. I got append bytes. There we go.
So would you say HLS is the preferred method as opposed to using Flash for YouTube at this point in time?
Yes. And so our mobile site uses HLS for live streaming, right?
Yes.
And so, HLS, we can do both adaptive and live streaming with it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but on the mobile site today, it's just, we just use it for live streaming.
Yeah, at the moment it's just
Right,
for live
at the
streams.
moment.
Yeah.
But we could do adaptive streaming. So that's sort of the approach that we're taking, because that's something that we can get out the door today. We will be using the media source append bytes API once it's sort of been finalized and is available in more places.
Maybe you answered this, but what do you think is keeping Chrome from just adopting HLS in their desktop applications right now?
Sorry,
So on Chrome, on PC and Macintosh, or Apple desktop, not the iOS, they're not capable of playing back HLS, is my understanding
right.
correct right now?
I would direct that question to one of the Chrome developers, because I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I'm just going to yell it out, but one of the things you had in your earlier slides was about sort of semantic web and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, using a script tag or an embed tag or a video or an iframe tag, you don't get sort of like this sort of nice semantic nature of the web where like the tag is sitting there and parsed nicely.
Right.
So for people who are concerned about like SEO and clients and things like that, how does that all play in? Trying to like use like the correct thing, things like that.
I don't actually have a really good answer for that. We don't use a lot of the newer tags for things unless they're like specifically working with the video tag, mostly because the extra work that we'd have to do to get them working in the other browsers hasn't really shown to be worth our time. SEO is not a big concern of ours because a lot of people when they're searching on YouTube, well, that's we're indexing all that, so we don't have to worry about those things. So I'm sorry, I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's just hasn't been a concern of ours. Yeah.
So when you're delivering a live stream, to the desktop, if you're not using HLS, are you doing any form of bandwidth adaptation, perhaps statically at the beginning of the session to adjust the live stream's bandwidth to the bandwidth of the connection?
Sorry, I didn't actually, did you hear the whole question? I didn't hear it.
How are you delivering a live stream to the desktop? What protocol
Sure.
and what form of bandwidth selection are you using?
So today we can do HLS in Safari. Certainly that's not as big of a portion of our users as we'd like.
HLS in Safari to the desktop?
Yes.
Oh, good. Oh.
Elsewhere we have to wait. We have to wait until those APIs are available for us, and they're not yet.
So to a browser other than Safari, what do you do? Like to Chrome?
We use Flash. We use Flash today, and we use Flash for a lot of things. And I didn't really talk about it much today, but like Flash is still the majority of our playbacks because they have core features like live streaming and adaptive.
Do you use RTMP, which is Flash's real?
Right.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, the Flash player today does have the adaptive quality switching, like
right.
seamlessly.
In their protocol, they can do all of that.
So these are things that we're waiting for from the browsers to give us APIs so that we can build these same features, but they're not there yet. Cool.
This, you might just speculate on this, but do you think in the future dogs will overtake cats on YouTube? And to follow that up, will you create a button for dogs?
So there's absolutely no way that's going to happen, and I will show you why, because I will pull up my favorite cat video, and you'll understand that a dog will never be able to sort of have the same sort of effect. Ninja cat, here we go. I just couldn't imagine a dog doing this. Terrible. And on top of this, we actually sometimes see cats actually moving into the dog space as well. Let's see if that search. So we have videos like this where. So for both of these things, I can't envision a dog being that stealthy or being able to meow like a cat instead. So I really don't expect the dogs to take over like cats have. Yeah, and if you guys have, I guess if you guys have more questions, we'll be around the conference. We'll be outside. I think. I'm kind of getting thirsty. Isn't it time for like beer or something?
Yeah, it's almost beer time, yeah.
At night. So thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for coming, guys.